Okay, I wanted to compare Zelensky and Putin's New Year messages because, you know, it's now New Year's. Congratulations, you made it through 2024. Not all of us thought we were going to get to the end of it. Happy to see we did. Now let's see if we can get through 2025. And I wanted to see the different message that you're getting from Putin and Zelensky. First thing I'll make note of is the Ukrainian New Year's message from Zelensky is 20 minutes long. Now look, I just watched Biden have like a, and I'm not saying that Biden can't do this. I've seen him do this, but he doesn't do it often. Can you imagine Biden having a 20-minute long New Year's message? Like, where I could see him maybe going for a 20-minute long speech in good circumstances right now, but how well is he going to perform like that? Just saying. Instead of a 30-second heavily edited clip, it's good to have a more media-friendly, presentable leader. Point is, though, it's 20 minutes. It's quite long, so I don't think we're going to watch all of it. But thank you for the $2. Appreciate it. Putin's is like 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And so we'll watch some of both, compare the vibes, and see what the differences are. Let's start with Putin.
Уважаемые граждане России.
Friends, in just a few minutes, the year 2025 will begin, marking the completion of the first quarter of the 21st century. For Russia, this period has been marked by numerous events, including developments of historical significance and great magnitude. We set ambitious goals for ourselves and achieved them, coped with many challenges because we stood united.
I mean, look, in any other context, I mean, even in this context, but in any other context, it's hard for me to imagine Putin just basically brushing off their retreat out of Syria. Because, I mean, like, they lost Syria in like 12 days. They propped up Assad for nearly 12 years, nearly a decade, and then lost him in like 12 days. If you want to see a special military operation, they found that at the end of HTS's FPV drones and pickup truck assaults. And the Assad regime collapsed after investing all the air power and manpower and the international reputation that Russia staked on it, not only in the damage it did to its reputation through its bombings of hospitals and and others, and their loss of prestige in much of the Arab world, particularly among Syrians, but also their image of looking weaker. Donald Trump afterwards, after he was, withdrawing from Syria and Assad fell over, he openly kind of insinuated that he thought that Putin looked weak right now. And so this is like a huge, huge loss. And he's only acknowledged it on one occasion, and that was during the 4.5-hour press scrum, where they actually allow maybe a few, actually critical journalists, ones that would be critical of Putin, to ask him questions in a controlled environment, after, of course, being sandwiched with complimentary. It's all organizing and choreographed very well. Only in those environments was this brought up, and when it was brought up, Putin said, "We didn't lose. We made a decision to leave the situation, and now we're going to negotiate for the ports, etc." What did you do for 10, 11 years? Like, could you imagine after, 11, 12 years of Vietnam, as everything's like collapsing around us, we're just like, it is what it is. This isn't really that painful for us when you think about it. If any, this is a strategic withdrawal. And there were people who were treating it kind of like that, because originally the treaty was like, maybe we could have some treaty between the South and North Vietnamese, but when it collapsed and it all fell in on itself, nobody could deny that it was a loss from what we wanted. And the same is true for the Russians. Maybe they'll be able to negotiate some intermediary. It's just so wild to me that something that if it would have happened in 2021 would have been one of the biggest stories of the year, and something that it would be kind of difficult for Putin to talk about in public. Then it's still difficult for him to talk about in public now. But the strategy seems to largely just be blowing it off and pretending almost like it didn't happen. just if you don't talk about it, if you don't look at it directly, then it's not really that important and it's like it didn't happen. That seems to be the strategy.
This is what consolidated our unity, strengthened our confidence in ourselves, in our abilities, in our potential. True, there is still a lot to be accomplished, but we can be rightfully proud of what we have already achieved. This is our joint achievement, a solid foundation for future progress. Our nation, independent, free, and strong, has tackled successfully the most formidable challenges. As we stand on the brink of a new year, we think about the future. We are confident that everything is going to be all right. We will continue to advance. We know for sure that Russia's destiny and well-being of its people has always been and will remain our absolute value. Sincere love for our motherland gives our lives a deep sense of purpose, while determination to make our own contribution to protecting its sovereignty, security, interests, and freedom of development has become a matter of honor for us. As we welcome the new year, the thoughts and hopes of families and friends, of millions of people across Russia are with our soldiers and commanders. You are the true heroes who undertook a great task and immense responsibility of defending Russia and ensuring peace and security for our nation. We are proud of your bravery and valor, and we believe in you. In your honor, in honor of the 80th anniversary of great victory and as a tribute to the memory of our ancestors who have always defended the motherland, the upcoming year 2025 has been declared the year of the defender of the fatherland in Russia.
Oh my God, the defender, the defender, the defender, the defender. It's an offensive war. It's an offensive invasion to conquer land. It's all defender this, defender that, defender, 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 defender. Yeah, at some point you're not the defender, you're the attacker, right? You're on the attack. You cannot have it both ways, where on one hand your state TV is like, we're gonna have graphics of blowing up every Western capital with our beautiful atomic weapons, but then the next paragraph be like, truly we're the victims. When you really think about it, truly when you think about it, we're just a little baby. And the West is being very mean. You can't have it both ways, okay? It can maybe be like a little bit of a sliding scale, but you cannot be both extremes at the same time.
The children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of the generation.
Hey, Nina, thank you so much for the raid. I appreciate it. I just noticed.
That crushed Nazism. We remain loyal to the legacy and traditions of our veterans. Friends, New Year's Eve always holds a special place in our hearts, filling us with warmth and hope that our dreams, aspirations, and best intentions will come to fruition. As the countdown to the new year begins, we find ourselves surrounded by our near and dear ones, our family, children, parents, grandchildren, our friends, and comrades in arms. I wish happiness and prosperity to our every home and every family, and to our beloved country, Russia. Together, we can achieve anything. Happy New Year, friends. Happy 2025.
It'd be easier for me to swallow all this, by the way, if he didn't so much lean into how much he doesn't care about defending, how much he loves the worst excesses of attacking. For example, I don't know if you guys saw, and I think I have it here somewhere if you give me a moment. So remember, I was talking about that press conference, and we never did a video on it that Putin had. It was like a big press media scrum, 4.5 hours, where he was answering questions, pre-screened, of course. And it was, putting on a largely choreographed show, even though it does have some critical journalists in there to, project Putin, help Putin project his strength. While he was doing that, between the questions, he decided to bring out a flag.
Putin's threats are as valid as mine were in 2011 in a MW2 lobby.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Well, I hope you never delivered on any of those threats you made in those lobby rooms. It'd be very uncouth of you. Where is it? I'm looking for my bookmarks, but here we are. I'm trying to find it. Because Putin was doing this press scrum, and behind him at the press scrum, he decided to have these soldiers with this flag, and the flag represented like one of the most I don't know how to describe them outside of to be blunt, like one of the most war crimey military organizations, military formations in the entire Russian armed forces. And he's shouted these people out on multiple occasions during multiple speeches, had their soldiers behind them, showing their colors, showing their flags, including those who participated in the slaughter of Bucha, the Bucha massacre. And he's giving them medals, he's giving them commendations, he's giving them praise, he's giving them public support, trying to give them public, trying to get the public on their side. And so if that's like the type of people that Putin is projecting as the heroes of Russia when he gets the opportunity, it's the military formations that took part in some of those brutal massacres in the war. It makes it not difficult for me to hear him call the war like defensive or call the people who are fighting it defenders. It makes it impossible for me to hear it without getting a little sick. Let's see. Here it is. I found the image. Took me long enough. God damn. Here it is. The 155th. But yep. Nah, man. He loves them. His ideal soldier. Okay, now that we've gone through Putin's message, we heard its general themes. Let's go through some of the translation of Zelensky's. This is an English audio translation. It's not 100% accurate. I've already listened to it a little bit, but the government hasn't offered any other English translations that I found yet. Maybe there is one, I just haven't found it, or there will be, and it's just not posted yet, but this is the one we have, and it's not like horribly inaccurate. So let's listen for comparison. By the way, this is the this statue. You see the symbol on the shield that was changed recently while it was in the country. It used to have a hammer and sickle on it. It was an old Soviet statue, and they replaced it with the trident, the Ukrainian trident, in order to, Sovietize the statue. Oh, by the way, if you're curious what the statue's called, it's Mother Ukraine.
Dear peoples, behind me is Ukraine, the mother. Ukraine.
Okay, well, now I told him that's Zelensky. It was very impolite. I already said that. Okay, sorry. Let's actually listen.
Behind me is Ukraine, the mother. Ukraine, which stands firmly on its feet, does not bow its head, looks forward, believes in its future and victory over all the evil that Russia has brought us. Ukraine, which is capable of achieving a just peace, having a shield and a sword, defending its people, its colors, its independence. Today I address all who value Ukraine, who cherish their state, and lovingly call it mine. I thank you for 2024. To our people who face all difficulties with dignity, to the people for whom being citizens of Ukraine is a pride. And for me, it's a pride to be the president of such people. Ukrainians, both men and women, which proved that no cruise missiles can defeat a people who have wings. During this leap year, we proved it every day. And we saw it yesterday when we were inspired.
Happiness.
Because 189 Ukrainians have returned to their native land from captivity, because they will meet the new year at home.
There was another prisoner exchange where they got a lot of prisoners back.
Because we are bringing back our 1,358 people for this. 3,956 Ukrainians during this time. I am not giving approximate numbers, but very exact figures, because each one of them is a person. One of our people.
Why do you think
A very
Putin
important
hasn't done a false
person.
flag yet? I don't think it's above his morals. Also, good work, brother. Happy New Year's.
Why do you think Putin hasn't done a false flag yet? When somebody says hasn't done a false flag, I don't know what you mean. Do you mean like why hasn't he faked a massive Ukrainian terror attack in Russia? I think there's a few things. Number one, the first thing I would say is they have fake stuff. There have been I remember there was instances in trying to tie like terror attacks or like do false flags. I think it was some of the most at the start of the war, one of the most insidious and blatant versions was they had Russian soldiers dressed up like Ukrainian soldiers and then invade Russia, and they showed them crossing the border into Russia, but the area that they were crossing the border into Russia from was occupied territory. It was territory that's occupied in the Donbass. So who could have been crossing the border? It can only be them. And it wouldn't even make sense. Why would the Ukrainians be like, okay, it's time to go, let's invade Russia at the start of the... It doesn't make much sense. But there was false flags. There was also, of course, a lot of lies and examples of like false threats in order to justify the invasion. For example, the chemical weapons threat, the idea that there was biological weapons that Ukraine had been developing with the United States in secret research laboratories, that Tulsi Gabbard and a bunch of others, who is currently Trump's pick to have the top intelligence pick in the entire country, were saying was a legitimate threat. And, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Nothing panned out from it. It was the same type of biological research that's going on all over the world. And Ukraine has a right to do as much as any other country. My goodness. The undersea cable cutting is a false flag op in my mind. I don't know if it's a false flag op. I think it's an operation to degrade infrastructure. But I think on top of all of the points that I'm trying to put forward about whether there was this false flag, or for example, the Russian SIM card false flag, which for anybody who remembers that, I'll let you bask in its glory. For those of you who don't remember, good luck trying to find it. I think we've got an old video on it from a while back on DylanBurnsLIVE. That's a classic. Putting all that aside, they don't need to do a false flag. Russian imperial ideology didn't just fall out of the sky, and they need to go ooga booga 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 to the Russian public to get them to rally them against Ukraine. They have to do that to some extent because, Russian imperial legacy on its own is not going to be enough to mobilize enough people to fight the war. That's why they're paying incredibly high first-time deposits and wages and crazy benefits that are going to be very difficult for the Russians to actualize in the long term fiscally. They're doing that because they can't make it up with just dreams of imperial glory. But these are things that they could always call upon. Putin, I don't think really probably thought he needed all that much of a false flag. I mean, if he could make it blurry, if he could make it questionable exactly what was going on in some manner before he invaded, to use kind of a little bit of the fog that was around Crimea, even though it wasn't that foggy, but it was foggy, then it could help him, go forward. But at some point you can just say we're an empire. We have to exist as an empire. So you have to be part of our empire. And at that point, you don't need a false flag. You just be open and direct with your imperial ambitions. So, the Russians have engaged in false flags. The Russians have engaged in, propaganda and, making up fake threats. But a question is, do they legitimately even need those? I don't know. If the Russian public wasn't told about, chemical weapons or... any of that nonsense that was said at the start, would it really have changed much?
Person, one of our people, a very important person. And with the return of each one, we bring life back to Ukraine. And as always, when it happens, we all cry. And it doesn't matter if it's a touched mother, or a child who has waited for their father, or the president of Ukraine. We all cry because we are all human, and preserved the light within us. And it helped us endure these over 1,000 days. To be brave when it is so needed, to be strong when it is so important. As our teachers did or medical workers, or energy workers.
Can I just throw out there, Zelensky is so much of a better public speaker than Putin, by the way. Both when I heard him speaking in English and when they're speaking in their native tongues. Like, this is like, of course, like a translation with Zelensky saying, whether you're listening in native tongue or listening to, you know, the translated version of what he's saying. I just think he's a much better public speaker. I think he presents his ideas much better, and I think it's part of the reason why the Russians took a huge L in the early stages of the war, PR-wise, internationally, and is why there was such a quick rally around Ukraine. Or when we say quick, I mean in the fact that they got in their moral corner and the fact that they should support them very quickly, not that they actually took the actions of supporting or all the necessary actions quick enough. But I think in large part, and I don't think this can be emphasized enough, Zelensky was very good at describing the Ukrainian story to a bunch of people who have never heard it before. I think having people who work in the media industry can sometimes be underestimated how useful that can be to translate to the public. And he's just a generally personable guy. That's not to say that he's not, like, you know, he doesn't have money in the Cayman Islands like the rest of the very powerful people. But that's just to say that he can communicate his message very well. And I do think that his message does come off as genuine, in large part because he probably is genuine. I do think he believes the stuff he's saying around Ukraine. Very good at what he does. Very good. I mean, who would have thought an actor would be a good public speaker and politician? Wow, actors are the best politicians. There's a lesson in there somewhere.
Our transport workers, as all our air defense operators did, mobile fire teams, the guys who shot down 1,310 crews and ballistic missiles this.
Can I also give so much credit to those guys? Because I've been out with those guys at night during the winter as they're waiting for hours and hours and hours for drones that a lot of times never come and pass over so they could shoot at them for 20 to 25 seconds out of 8 to 10 hours out in the cold. I respect those guys immensely, man. It's like slow hunting. It really is like you're going on a Shaheed safari or a Shaheed rodeo, a drone rodeo of some sort.
Here, 7,800 Iranian Shaheeds. Bravo, pride, thank you. We went through this year together, overcoming everything that 2024 brought. Victories and setbacks, joys and challenges, tears of happiness when we succeeded, and tears of pain when we were hurt. Heart. July morning, Omadit. That's how the weekend cowards hit. And we will never forget those children's eyes. And we will never forgive them for this. When evil brings death, our response is a living chain. This is what the strength of Ukrainians looks like.
I gotta say, another thing that's different here, of course, putting aside like the difference in like speaking skill directly, the editing here between the Russian president and the Ukrainian president here is massive. Just the amount of time to edit, and of course, much longer video, but the amount of time to edit, get different camera angles on Zelensky, try to find a semi-cinematic angle where Putin's just like directly at the TV. He's speaking towards the TV the same way Georgescu or any other like Soviet-era leader would have been speaking towards the TV, or a lot of politicians would, where Zelensky's leaning a lot into the editing team and his acting. But the editing here, a lot more fluid.
And our unity was evident. From space, God saw it, saw what kind of people we have, what children we have. And I will not forget this incredibly mature
from
and
the
strong
eyes of the boy Suk Maldita.
How long to live in it?
Light, energy.
How many? Dignity.
And on the ski.
This one child is stronger than...
I don't know what these tiny little pieces of English audio are. It might be like other pieces of Ukrainian audio that other people say that they're translating that was part of the video, like a soldier saying quickly one of these words. I don't know what it is, but it's something.
Putin. How much stronger all our children are than all their EV Ukrainian boys and girls who are winning this war. They gain.
By the way, I think I said Georgescu, and I meant to say
Nicolae Ceausescu.
Ceausescu. Yeah, I said Georgescu, and I'm realizing I think that's a different Romanian politician right now, actually.
Happy New Year's, bro.
The recent
Can
crazy
you clear up
fascist.
something for me? I heard there are still Russians in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, but I thought they all left.
No. They can't be still in the Chernobyl exclusion zone because that's all. I mean, like maybe on the other side in some of the irradiated area in Belarus or something, but no, not in Ukraine, not in the Kiev Oblast. There are no more Russians in the Kiev Oblast, outside of maybe spies and such.
Knowledge online and even in underground schools. They win global science Olympiads, raise funds for our army. And
let me rephrase that. There's no living Russians in the Kiev Oblast.
Come up with technical solutions that help our defense. You are a fantastic generation. This is who we are fighting for. This is who our heroes are protecting first and foremost. Our warriors who stand firm and bear independence on their shoulders, where freedom and courage fight every day. And now, on this New Year's night, on all our fronts, in the East, where it is very, very difficult and very challenging. But we believe, we know, you will endure, they will endure. Our guys, your spirit and courage, all that, thanks to which you did not give away our Sumy and Kharkiv, our Kherson, and our Zaporizhzhia this year, and the Russians really wanted that. But instead you repaid the occupiers, sending the war back.
To the house in...
Now, when he talked about Sumy, he says the Russians want this. And he was talking about regions like Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, that the Russians said they're annexing and they want to take this land, etc. They invaded into Kharkiv. When he says Sumy, part of the justification for the Ukrainian launch of the operation into Kursk is that they were preempting a Russian attack into Sumy. Now, whether that is true or not, I don't know. I remember speaking to, like, the mayor of Bilopila, and I asked him, like, so what do you think about that? About the idea that this was to protect Sumy. And we were, like, standing in the town. It was, a lot of it bombed out because it's a border town. And, you know, it's been in the middle of a lot of the shelling in that area. And he said, I hope so. And so you really don't know for sure. But part of the reason why the Ukrainians got the jump on the Russians is because they thought the buildup of Ukrainian troops in Sumy was because they were defensive and were expecting a Russian attack. And what the Russians thought was defensive buildup was actually offensive buildup, as we now know. Which leads me to believe that, well, that means the Russians weren't building up troops for necessarily an attack into Sumy. It doesn't mean they weren't necessarily going to do it. Maybe later. Maybe they found some operational plans that they are developing. So I don't know. All I'm saying is it's still completely up in the air, the part about Sumy. But that was one of the justifications for the Kursk operation, was to protect Sumy.
In Russia.
7. And the one who sowed trouble.
On our land, they got it from us for a cheek.
Chicks. And in other places.
So where did our response land this year? Our justice. Justice.
Just one word, but...
Hundreds of thousands of our people stand behind it. Our defense industry, our science, whose intellect and work have made us stronger. Because 30% of everything that this year
it was with
on the battle...
Dylan, will you cover the Tulsi Gabbard speech? I don't even want to... I don't like the idea that she's even near the White House in any capacity. I'm going to have to actually sit down and listen to her speak. Why? 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 I don't think so. Dylan, did you cover North Korean soldiers shooting and killing Russian soldiers? No, I haven't heard about this. email me the story at DylanBurnsTV@gmail.com or DM it to me on Instagram or Twitter or Discord, really anywhere, and I'll take a look at it.
Battlefield, all this was made in Ukraine. And at one such factory, I asked a young engineer how you managed so much, how these people achieved so much. And the young man joked, well, they are not just people, they are rockets. And you know, at that moment, I felt ashamed as a citizen that since the 1990s, the state did not notice people like ours. And I am proud when I meet them the whole year and here, they are happy to be needed by Ukraine. And that Ukraine is once again building its own missiles. And for the first time,
Happy New Year's, man. It's not much, but you are a real one for going to Ukraine and reporting on what you saw. Much respect.
Hey, thank you for the $10, Mole. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, actually. Thank you. I think that's the biggest donation of today's stream. Yeah! Thank you, Mole. You'll be sent a $30 Dylan Burns TV limited edition t-shirt as a compensation, which will put us $20 in the hole, but because you're getting the shirt, I think I win through promotion. This is an economic model that cannot fail. If you donate $10, you get a $30 shirt, officially at Dylan Burns TV. This is an economic success model, okay? This is like when Red Lobster did the endless shrimp. Another successful economic ploy. No, we're not doing that. But thank you for the $10. I appreciate it. That was crazy, though. Americans really so fat they were gonna endless shrimp Red Lobster to death. It was only through scraping the bottom of the barrel and literally crawling out of the coffin that they were able to survive.
is making over 1 million UAVs in a year, forcing the enemy to learn Ukrainian.
Oh, also, they're really hyping up these long-range missiles that the Ukrainians are developing. And there was a story recently, and I think even Zelensky put it out, and it's just complete bullshit. And it was the idea of maybe one of these missiles actually being used. I have to go double check if Zelensky was the one that put it out, but somebody brought this information to me, and then immediately, like, after bringing the information to me, he then immediately corrected himself, like, never mind, this is complete nonsense. Don't know why Zelensky put this out there. So there keeps being these rumors about, oh, did this Ukrainian missile get used here? Did it get used there? Did it get used anywhere? We really do not know. And while there is a missile program in Ukraine, we know that for sure. We have no clue how far along they are in development for long-range missiles that could strike places like Moscow or otherwise. And we certainly don't have any idea about scale of production, because even if they get a successful prototype, the Germans had many successful prototypes during the end of World War II. There's many interesting prototypes. If you don't have the logistics and production capacity to make it at scale, then it's just going to be a problem. And it's not going to go that far.
Ukraine Groiper has donated $20. Donate more maggots.
Hey, thank you for the 20, Ukraine Groiper. I gotta say, you know, as we all know, as the top Groiper in Groiperstan, you're very welcome here. Nick Fuentes, that fake poser, needs to get out of the Groiper community. I don't know what to say, man. Thank you for the $20. $20 is $20, okay? Ukraine Groiper. Ukraine Groiper. That's gotta be weird, man. Because there's like a far right in Ukraine, there's a far right in Russia. Imagine being like the part of the Ukrainian far right Groiper, and you're like, yeah, we're with the far right, we're defending Ukraine to defend the white race against the Tuvan, the Mongol horde or whatever. And then all of a sudden you look around as just because of the political ebbs and flows, and because Putin's been able to advertise himself as lay Christian crusader who is going to war with mostly Christians. Anyway, because they've been able to rebrand him all of a sudden, it's never mind, complete 180, you're on the other side. It must be painful, because I've seen a few of these guys. I've seen, like, far-right Ukrainian, like, actual Nazis. Like, I mean, they're in the fucking trenches constantly. Because on one side, they look to their left and like, God damn it, everybody on my left is like a libtard. And then they look to their right and it's like, God damn it, all the former Nazis are over there. Why are all the Nazis with the Russians? To be a Ukrainian Nazi is to be socially isolated. Truly the real victims here. Ukrainian far-right doesn't really like Reupers, to be honest. Well, of course they don't like Reupers, because the Reupers are generally American isolationists, and they're, generally speaking, against supporting Ukraine. Nick is slowly coming around on Ukraine, I feel. Oh, wait, you're not like an actual Ukraine Groip. No, I'm just gonna... This is a meme. You're screwing with me. I need to not dig here. I might not like what I uncover. I might not like what I uncover, man.
Is making over 1 million UAVs in a year, forcing the enemy to learn Ukrainian. Palyanitsa, hell, Ruta, makes one tremble from the words Neptune, Sapsan. All of this is just the beginning.
Ukrainian, mountain vampire, hummingbird, stone.
All these are our...
And by the way, Nick's not going to come around on Ukraine. You're going to know why Nick's not going to come around on Ukraine is because him and a lot of others fall for the aesthetics of Christian beliefs before the practicing of Christian beliefs. And for me, it's going to be every time like, what? Let me draw you up the scenario. Ukraine, on let's say next year, today, Ukraine allows civil partnerships for men who want to be with other men. And for the domestic reasons for that, the debate is largely centered on soldiers who are in the field being buried by their partners after dying. And a lot of it has to do with the fact of just them having the legal right to bury their loved ones. It's even for like, I don't know many like diehard homophobes even, that when I sit down and I explain, like, it's not even like a marriage thing. They just want the ability to bury their loved ones. It's very hard to hold up your defenses against that, just on a human level. I could see very easily, because a lot of this I think is aesthetic, and it's of a certain, there's certain priorities as a Christian that I think honestly are completely out of whack. But I think that if that was passed this day next year, on the same day where the Russians killed 40 children in a hospital bombing, the first story would be the one that would get the outrage. That's how it's been treated so far. And so I just don't have any reason to believe that that's going to change. And so, for me, I don't think that it's going to come around. I think some story will drop like that, where Zelensky, being a liberal, will do something liberal, which will then make them cringe, and so they'll go for the other guy, who's bombing and killing largely Christians because he's the Christian guy. We're going to have American Christians praise the Russian government, the Russian Orthodox government, who is suppressing largely American Christian denominations in Ukraine because of the aesthetics. It doesn't really have to do with the Christianity necessarily, because a lot of these people don't know about the denominational persecution, and they don't know that their own denominations were the ones being persecuted. But just the idea of it, at least. The aesthetic of it, at least. The vague outline of this idea.
Our Ukrainian drones. And all these are our arguments. Arguments for a just peace. Only the strong achieve it. And we have proven more than once that we are like that. Our athletes, Alexander Kizhniak, our tank, Olha Karlan, Yaroslava Mahuchik, all our Olympians and Paralympians, for whom we cheered, worried, and shouted with joy and pride when the blue and yellow flag rose. We took hits and fought back together with Alexander Usyk.
Okay, just quickly on Usyk, because I can gush about Usyk for a while. Number one, he solidified himself as one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT of the heavyweight division of this generation. And now it's just a question of, honestly, it's a question of where we go from here. Like, what is there left for him to achieve besides knocking down the other heavyweight contenders or going back down the cruiserweight to reunify just for the fucking hell of it? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, Alexander Usyk is now like the iconic Ukrainian. Like outside of Zelensky, it's like Usyk is the other really, really famous Ukrainian. I can't think of anyone else that would come close. And so to have him winning in this stage against a heavyweight of such quality as Tyson Fury, and being able to not only bring forward the Ukrainian music, Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture, but he's like holding up Mazeppa's sword, and he's like making these like blatant calls to Ukraine's resistance on the international stage, and to keep winning in the sport, which is extremely popular in Eastern Europe and in Russia. Zelensky, I know, very much appreciates Usyk's continued dominance in the sport. And honestly, it could not... I'm thinking the historical timing for Usyk rising to be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and possibly the greatest of this heavyweight generation. I mean, out of all of the times for him to rise to the top, for it to happen now, that's how he's become one of the iconic Ukrainians. And it's gonna, and I don't know if he's gonna be in the future. He'll be considered that way. I can't look into the future, but I think he'll probably will be. I think that he's kind of written himself in the history books in a major way in Ukraine. I mean, not only in Ukraine, in the world now, in the world of sport.
It's about something more than just sports.
Yes,
It's about our character, about who we are, and what we are capable of. Meanings and symbols. About how Sasha's fights, like Ukraine's daily battles, show us it doesn't matter how much bigger the opponent is than you. What matters is how much greater your will is. Then it takes the breath away of the whole world and all the leaders. I was frankly told we have never seen anything like this. When the entire hall of Notre Dame de Paris applauds, and those were applause for you, all our people. This is what respect for Ukraine sounds like. This is what independence is. Independence is when we do not give up what is ours, and when we do not forget our people. Those who...
By the way, we're gonna do more. I know that this like translation or like having the auto trans, it's like, oh, Dylan, can't we just listen to one of Zelensky's speeches in English? Look, just like it's better to listen to Netanyahu's speeches in Hebrew, it's better to listen to Russian state media in Russian, it's better to listen to Zelensky speak to his own people about policy. That's not to say we don't listen to what he messages towards the West at all, but I mean, the same general principle applies. And I think that's the same here.
Who are in captivity. And we will fight for every person who, unfortunately, is still there. And we will fight for everyone. For all those whom Russia has driven into occupation. But they could not occupy their Ukrainian hearts. And no matter how much evil tries to hand out passports at gunpoint, our people say, you are not native here, you are temporary. And all those brought-in weeds will not take root in our land, will not overcome the natives. And I always recall the story of an old Ukrainian man who was asked by the occupiers, what time is it? And they heard the answer. It's time to get off our land. That's what an inner will is, which simply cannot be occupied. And I address all those who carry this will in the temporarily occupied territories. Dear Ukrainians, I know that you celebrate the new year in our time, and now you are hearing these words. In our Crimea, in Donbas, in Melitopol, in Mariupol, everywhere they are waiting for Ukraine. And where one day, Ukraine will return to be together. And the only thing that will separate Ukrainians is a generously set table. I know at this table will be all our people, those who are currently abroad, but have kept Ukraine inside them. So today, in the first minute of the new year, in Warsaw, New York, or Buenos Aires, has not yet perished, will be heard.
See, this is why I wanted to listen to his stuff in Ukrainian to his own people. This is the stuff that I think is very valuable for Westerners to listen to. Because not only do you get to hear more of the Ukrainian perspective about why they're so stubborn about land, because I mean, it's just land, it's just land. But there's people in Mariupol, there's people in Mariupol, not to mention lives and histories and, you know, property and, like, you know, I mean, there's more than, of course, just not only the people still there. Of course, that's the most valuable part. It's just, there's so much more to that than just saying something like land. Because then you just look at it like a barren piece of just like dirt. You don't think about the nature. You don't think about the houses that people have built and worked on and lived in for generations, their graveyards where their families are buried, their sons, their daughters, their brothers, their fathers, their mothers. You don't think about what it costs to lose everything and not be able to get it back and have it given to foreign settlers who are being awarded your home. Or to, if you are staying behind, lose your civil liberties or have to live in fear of occupation and have to give up your national identity, your tongue. Like when you listen to Zelensky talk about the unwillingness to abandon his people, my question is, how do you get this guy to be able to say, actually, never mind, after saying this, in order to get to Putin's demands about territory, to accept the quote-unquote territorial reality? You can't. You can't. You might be able to get him to accept a temporary ceasefire where maybe he'll try to pressure for those pieces of land diplomatically in the future. Maybe if it included NATO membership and something else, like so you were giving some concession in response, you could get him, make him give up something like Crimea. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But you can't say this to your population and then follow it up with, lol, never mind. You can't. And when we talk about this with Putin all the time, like you can't invade and then go home with nothing, you cannot, you know, perform as the Ukrainians have performed when nobody believed in them and then not deliver something to your people. I mean, there's demands at home for the Ukrainians as well. And I think it's really useful to not only listen to this perspective, but also understand where, you know, the government is and how they're communicating to people domestically. Because obviously, like, you don't message like this and immediately follow it up with abandoning those in occupied territory.
100%.
Oh, thank you for 100. Thank you for the 100% support and the $50. I appreciate that. Thank you, Martin. Anyway, very useful to listen to them, and it's also useful to give you an idea of at least the Ukrainian policy outlook. And the reason why it's better to listen to this is when Netanyahu's speaking Hebrew, what he's saying there is much more likely to be closer to the state policy. And I think that's usually the case for governments speaking in their native tongue to their own people instead of foreign governments. And I think that's the same here. I saw some confusion earlier about it, so I wanted to clarify.
In Berlin, Prague, or Tokyo today, people will say, glory to Ukraine, and the world will respond, glory to the heroes, because Ukraine is not alone, because with us are our friends. From the first moments of this war, America has been with Ukraine, and I believe that America will be with Ukraine.
Oh, and Mole, thank you for the tenor. I just saw that. Just big USA pivot. Big USA pivot. Again, this is in Ukrainian to the Ukrainian population. Big USA pivot with the stars and bars. No, not the stars and bars. With the stars and stripes on the... God, that'd be crazy. Zelensky gets it wrong. Just the Confederate flag on the... Oh, God, what a disaster. No, the stars and stripes on the Mother Kiev statue.
From the first moments of this war, America has been with Ukraine. And I believe that America will be with Ukraine in the first moments of peace. I remember the conversation with Joe Biden after the Russian invasion. I remember the conversation with Donald Trump after his election. All the conversations with congressmen, senators, ordinary Americans, with everyone who supports us in the USA, Europe, the world. In these many and different conversations, there was always unity in the main thing.
Putin cannot win. Ukraine will return.
Putin must not win. Ukraine will prevail. I thank all Americans for proving these words with actions. I have no doubt that the new American president wants and can bring peace and put an end to Putin's aggression.
Understand what?
The first is impossible without the second. Because this is not a street brawl where two sides need to be calmed down. This is full-scale aggression by a mad state against a civilized one. I believe that together with the United States, we are capable of compelling Russia to a just peace. That is not to forget or nullify everything Russia has done. Olenivka, Avdiivka, all our destroyed cities and villages.
I do want to say the key word here, though, is compelling, which is different than the 24-hour game plan that Trump was throwing out there. He's saying now the reports indicate from the Financial Times, from European officials, that Trump's new proposal is a NATO GDP percent standard increase to, he says 5%, but maybe they really go to 3.5%. And if Europe increases its defense spending, then they will continue aid. Whether it'll be decreased.
Here's some shekels to fund your liberal propaganda operation, my guy.
Thank you, Freaky Frosty. I'll be as libtardy as ever. Thanks to you. Thank you. But in this, where were we? Before I got... Freaky Frosty is a good name. What was I? Oh yeah, the European officials said that would continue the aid. But we don't know, and Trump has suggested that maybe it wouldn't continue at previous numbers, which would mean that he could make the same mistake of decreasing aid, dragging out the conflict, instead of trying to compel, as Zelensky is suggesting, which would mean, trying to increase your negotiating position, not trying to build up military force to just take back Crimea by force, but to build up your negotiating position so the Russians have to sit down and negotiate with the Ukrainians as if they're a neighboring country deserving of respect, recognition, and acknowledgement of their sovereignty. And until that happens, in my view, I don't think there's ever going to be peace. Because if Ukraine can just be disregarded and ignored, and they're not going to negotiate with them on terms that are and produce a final outcome, I fear it's just going to continue to kick the can down the road.
That's why a truly just peace cannot come under the principle of let's start with a clean slate. Because the score is not 0-0, it's in the thousands. Lives stolen by Russia. And today the heart of Ukraine is scarred. These are the names of our fallen heroes. God forbid any family in the world should endure such losses. To no leader in the world would I wish to experience these feelings at the moment when you present awards. Posthumously, you see the eyes of the mother, the wife, child warriors who gave their life for Ukraine. And you hear from them, please let all this not be in vain. Thousands of our boys and girls have not gone into oblivion. They are with us. They are always nearby. They watch over us from the heavens, and we do not have the right to them withdraw. And we cannot betray their heroism and memory. And every day in the next year, all of us must fight for a Ukraine that will be strong enough. Because only such a Ukraine is respected and heard, both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table. I thank everyone who stood by us this year, our partners, allies, friends, leaders, and true leaders, not just because it is accepted to turn to those who prove their leadership with actions. Those who were not afraid to visit Ukraine, knowing how valuable it is to see that we stand shoulder to shoulder. With whom, despite the distance and despite the time difference, we worked. We found solutions, we achieved results. Patriots, IRIS-Ts, NASAMs, ATACMS, F-16s, Scalps, Storm Shadows, the Ramstein Initiative, and 1 million shells. Danish model, and hundreds of millions into our domestic production. 27 security agreements, and 40 billion for supporting our army. The European Union, and 50 billion to support our economy. The Group of 7, and a decision on $50 billion of frozen Russian assets.
Man, so many billions and billions are here, billion there, and nobody has yet to really be like, man, let's just spend like maybe, I don't know, $500,000 just on excavators so they can dig the hole in the ground. I'm sorry, but like 50% of the success of this war is depend upon hole, dig, ground, be good, okay? I know that sounds dumb, but it's the case. Dig hole, ground, be good, save soldier life, win war, okay? Simple math. Simple 1 to 1 to 1.
This is our great international work, a great international victory. I thank the partners, thank you for this. Thank the team, the army, the government, the office, the parliament, the regions, the communities, volunteers, everyone who contributes. Our country is stronger on the inside, takes care of people. Thank you to everyone, thanks to whom Ukraine stands and will endure, will overcome its path to peace.
Kadyrov and Lukashenko on the next hippy dippy debating their short future? Also GG, good stream.
Thank you, I appreciate it. You know, I wonder, because the thing is, Kadyrov's family got into power by basically backstabbing the rest of the Chechen rebels. And so some people think like Kadyrov's power is based in Putin, and therefore if Putin goes down, he goes down. But I could see a scenario where Putin starts to go down, and Kadyrov, you know, they say the apple does not fall far from the tree, like father, like son. You know, jumps on the situation, tries to make it an independent Kadyrovite Chechnya. I mean, it's hard to say, of course. We're completely in like speculation territory. But I always wonder which way it would go. Would it be Kadyrov continuing to bet his fortunes on Putin to the bitter end? And at what point would he take out the knife? I wonder. Wonder.
A strong Ukraine, and to Ukraine in Europe.
Retire.
And this is no longer just words. It's the reality that arrived in June of this year with the start of negotiations on Ukraine's accession to the EU. And this is a historic result. This path is now irreversible. And Ukraine will be in the European Union, and one day Ukraine will be in NATO, and it will strengthen the alliance, strengthen the resilience of the world, the unity of Europe, which determines the fate of every nation on the continent. And everyone must respect this unity, including Budapest and Bratislava. I know, both the Hungarian and Slovak peoples, they are actually with us, with Ukraine, with Ukrainians. They are on the side of truth. The authorities of these countries must also recognize the truth. Do not be afraid that Ukraine will be in Europe. We must do everything to ensure there is no Russia or its tanks in Europe. Its missiles, its evil, which it will inevitably carry further if Ukraine. It will not stand. If today Russia shakes your hand
I will say, when I talk to people, what he just said about, like, Ukraine is fighting so that, tanks doesn't go further. Of course, they're fighting for themselves too, but that is an outcome of their fight, is that they stop the tanks from going deeper into Europe. That is something that I believe most Ukrainians believe, and from my conversations with them, a lot of the bitterness that can come with, for example, a lack of aid or holding back on aid, or frozen aid, comes from that position too, where it's like, we're the ones bleeding out for you, and you can't even give us your Cold War era stuff you're phasing out of. I mean, like, what are we? I mean, come on, we're helping you out. We're the ones dying for you. Do you guys want to be the ones fighting in Poland? And that can produce a lot of, and I think it produces a significant amount of the bitterness that you see when people are reacting to, or like Ukrainians are reacting to, like, American isolationists, or specifically people who are like, oh, maybe like kind of like hand waving, like, oh, we don't need to do that much more, or like, oh, we've already done enough, or et cetera, et cetera. Because it tastes
immoral,
terrible,
morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
It tastes terrible to sacrifice so much, understand how it's benefiting your neighbors, and then feel unappreciated. To have such a significant and human sacrifice, a sacrifice of your families, to, in your mind, be almost like hand waved. Thank you, Trashamancer, for the sub. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you.
It does not mean that tomorrow it won't start killing you with that same hand. Because Russians fear the free. What is unfamiliar to them? They are afraid of freedom. They were born under Putin. They went to school under Putin, went to serve under Putin, and are dying for his sick ideas. And that is why it is so important today to support all the peoples who stand for freedom, who do not give it away. In Chisinau, those who are fighting for their future in Tbilisi. And I am confident the day will come when all of us will say, long live Belarus. Dear Ukrainians, let 2025 become our year, the year of Ukraine. We know that peace will not be given to us, but we will do everything to stop Russia and end the war. What each of us would want for each of us to have Ukraine, and she deserves to live in peace. I wish this for all of us, both as the president of Ukraine and as a citizen. I will do everything for this next year, knowing that I will not be alone. I know that by my side are you, millions of Ukrainians, strong, free, beautiful, independent.
Happy New Year, dear people.
Happy New.
I'm sorry. This AI shit was so funny the whole time. Just the vocal changes, the awkward pauses. Just that felt really different. Let me hear that again.
Independent, strong, free, beautiful, independent.
Happy New Year, dear people.
Okay. Worth it. Not that great. Honestly, I would say pretty, AI translations, good. Just for that, made it worth it.
Happy New
Year to Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
At the end, he almost talks like the master in like Fallout. 1 second.
Happy New Year, dear people.
Happy New
Year to Ukraine.
Oh no, he 100% talks like it. 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can make the comparison. I wonder if anybody here's played the original Fallout. I'm sure a few of you have, you nerds. Yeah, okay, here it is. Listen to this and then listen to this. Come on.
So what shall it? Happy New Year, dear people.
Happy New
Year to Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
It be? Do you join the unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die!
Join.
Die!
That's all I could think about when I was hearing the differences every like 3 or 5 seconds in the AI tone. Anyway, that's enough silliness. Now he sounds like the guy from the Metro games. I don't know, his tone was kind of all over the place.